November the 20th. It is election day here in Canada. If you have not exercised your democratic right to vote like I have yet, polls are open until 9:30. So make sure to get out there. There is still time. Hopefully this meeting ends before 9:30. If not, I may just call it. Tonight, I understand that, first, I should call for a roll call. So I see everybody in attendance for council. CAO Morris, I'll ask you to do a roll call of staff.
Yeah, so we have several staff from Public Works and Utilities with us this evening. We have Vanessa Bernicke, Jason Barlow, and I'd like to introduce you to our new Director of Public Works and Utilities, Mr. Paul McMunn. And as well, we have our ever-present Deputy Clerk, Nadine Bennett. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Morris. Mr. McMunn, welcome to the table. Would you like to say anything, or we'll save that for later when you present the reports? All right, we'll wait for later. Okay, item number 1 on the agenda, amendments to the agenda. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, thank you. I'll call for a disclosure of monetary interests. Seeing none, a reminder that if at any point during the reading of the agenda you discover that you do have monetary interest, please disclose it at that time, and our clerk, Deputy Clerk Bennett, will make sure it is noted for the record. We have no delegations tonight due to the nature of the meeting, nor do we have an adoption of minutes, and I understand that we have no CAO or director's reports tonight. We also have no, CAO Morris is nodding, is that correct? Or
that is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. We have no correspondence items, nor do we have any in-camera items to discuss. So we're going to fly right on into priority issues under item 8 on the agenda. 8.1 is the award of tender 21-PW-017 for the wastewater treatment plant PLC upgrade. And I'll be honest, I don't know what the acronym for PLC is, so perhaps Mr. Barlow can inform us.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Mayor, members of Council. Tonight I bring forward Report 2021-094, which is the award of tender for the wastewater treatment plant programmable logic controller upgrade. A little background, we brought a report to Council on June 23rd to move forward with the tender, and to have we had a few options, and we decided to tender in a 2-phase process with some provisional items for addition to the main tender to try to get better pricing. That was approved, and our tender was released on July 21st. The tender closed on August 26th, and there were 3 bids submitted. Bid from Capital Controls and Instrumentation, Excel Pro Automation, and Selectra. The work within the contract will include but not be limited to the removal of the existing outdated Bristol Babcock controllers, SCADA Pack 32 for our CSO, OPP, and Center Street pump stations, and the related communications and wiring, replacing those systems with the new programmable logic controller cabinets to be integrated within the existing communication network as per tender 21-PW-017. The lowest price tender submission was from Capital Controls and Instrumentation, and it was deemed to be compliant. References were followed up from other municipalities, and they were satisfied with the workmanship and professionalism throughout their projects, and still use Capital Controls for their instrumentation and integration projects that have moved forward since their projects completed. So the recommendation is that the Council of Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls award tender 21-PW-017 for the wastewater treatment plant PLC upgrade to Capital Controls and Instrumentation in the amount of $436,662.38, including HST, as recommended in Report 2021-094, and that Council authorize the Mayor and Clerk to execute the final contract agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Questions from McGuire, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. I was interested to see that the engineer's estimate was so much higher than what the bids came in at. Could we get some more information on why they were overestimating it by that much?
Yeah, we believe that these were very competitive bids by the two of the lowest bidders. So with those aggressive bids that came in, that's why the prices were as reduced from the estimate from the engineering firm.
Sorry about that. All right, Councillor McGuire, does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. Okay, Mayor Pankow?
Thank you. Jason, could you explain what the programmable logic controller does? I mean, for the benefit of everyone watching, it's a significant investment, but how critical it is to the operations of the facility.
Sure, yeah, through the chair. The programmable logic controller is the brain of our operation. So it's the computer system that keeps the whole facility in operation, right from the headworks and the sewage coming into the plant, right through to disinfection and the release of the water into the environment after it's been treated. So it controls all aspects of the facility: valves, pumps, motors, chemical addition, and our solid waste management as well.
And as a follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And Jason, what would be the life expectancy of the new system?
Technology is always increasing. So the life expectancy is, you put a timeline of 30 to 40 years on this equipment, but there is going to be maintenance and other requirements throughout that lifespan. Is not something that can't be improved or worked on in a near future kind of thing. It's going to help us to be able to integrate some different technologies into the facility as well. Right now, we're limited because of the older system that's in place.
Thank you. So, I mean, we've got like the 30-year-old facility now, which we've been doing upgrades, I guess, probably every year or two on different operations. So I appreciate the work and the effort here. I'm pleased with the tender results, and I will support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Sean. Excuse me, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, along the lines of questioning of the mayor, I know, I think it was just a week ago, we talked about some pumps and building a contingency should one fail. We've always got a backup. With this being the brains of the organization, or not the organization, the whole system, what's the backup should something catastrophic happen to this? Is there a contingency or something like that in place?
Yeah, through the chair, right now, yes, it's to run the facility in manual. So operations staff would have to be on site 24/7 if a part of this was to fail at this time. And after the upgrade, hopefully we'll have enough stock and pieces on site to be able to make repairs of a more available system in place with the upgraded PLCs.
Thank you. I too will be supporting the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions or comments from council? Hearing none. Okay, I'll call for just a show of hands to advance this. Yep, thumbs up to what I believe is council tonight. Jason, is that correct?
I believe
yes,
so.
We'll bring forward the contract tonight at the council meeting to follow immediately following this committee of the whole. So thank you, Jason. Sorry, we bumped you off the last agenda and made you come back.
It's all good.
All right, moving on. Item 8.2 is over to Deputy Clerk Bennett. It is the land acknowledgement and statement for the town of Smiths Falls. Nadine, would you like to explain?
Thank you. I trust that everyone's read the report that was posted with our agenda, Report 2021-99. Tonight, I'm here to bring forward a recommendation from our Racism and Discrimination Task Force. Our task force met and they received a draft acknowledgement that had been created by Mr. Chuck Commanda. I believe most of you know Mr. Chuck Commanda is a great part of the local powwow, master canoe builder, and also a storyteller. And Mr. Commanda composed the acknowledgement, sent it to our group, and we also sought some input from community member Francine Desjardins, as well as all of our members on the Racism and Discrimination Task Force. So the wording is attached to the report. tonight we're asking that council support this. This would be something that would be read at the beginning of our council committee meetings, as well as our board and committee meetings. And you'll note in the recommendation, the land acknowledgement is quite lengthy. The wording, you know, is it was brought forward by Mr. Chuck Commanda, and the Racism and Discrimination Task Force. We're very proud of the words that he chose and the history that he detailed in that acknowledgement. However, the recommendation is to read the full acknowledgement at the inaugural meeting, followed by the first and third paragraph at other meetings following that, just to shorten it up. So we look forward to council's input tonight, and if it's supported, we bring forward a resolution to tonight's council meeting.
Thank you, Nadine. Questions from the floor. Councillor Alfred to start, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have long supported having this acknowledgement, and I will be supporting it tonight in memory of Teddy Bellingham. I told that story when we were on council earlier, and if people are interested in the story of Teddy Bellingham, I refer them to look online. It's all there, and tonight it's some kind of acknowledgement of Teddy himself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Councillor McKenna.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This was a very thoughtful and well-written land acknowledgement, and what I really love about it is it's customized to our community. Many of the other acknowledgements, and they're all important, are a little more generic in nature. And I think the mayor pointed out at our committee meeting that it was a long time thought that there was not a large presence of Indigenous people in this area. But Mr. Commanda has really pointed to the fact that our area was indeed not only habitated, but it was a key navigation area for the Indigenous people. So I too am very proud to be supporting this, and I do hope that the committee suggested that Chuck actually be invited to read it at the inaugural meeting. So I hope that he's available, and I hope that my colleagues will agree to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Mayor Panko, you're up next, and then I believe I saw Councillor Allen's hand.
Yeah, not just to repeat what's been said, but I guess gratitude to Mr. Commanda, who also serves as a knowledge keeper and cultural advisor to the Upper Canada District School Board, and as was mentioned, very active in helping organize the previous powwows. I think this is something that is long overdue, and I'm glad we followed the process we did to come up with this result. And I think I'm very pleased that it is designed for our community and speaks to our community's relationship with the Indigenous peoples that came before us. So gratitude to Mr. Commanda, to Paul Meridew from SFDCI as well as the members of the task force who helped guide our direction on this, and end up with what I believe is a very suitable result.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Allen?
I won't repeat. I agree with my colleagues, and I guess I would add that on a year when we can't have the powwow, I mean, this is great that this is coming forward, and I look forward to that coming back to Turtle Island when we get through COVID and we're able to have large activities, because it was so special. But this is a very good step forward. I agree with it.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Any other comments from council? Seeing none. Nadine, thank you for bringing this forward on behalf of our racism task force. I really do look forward to seeing more recommendations like this coming forward. I think it's been a long time coming, and something that we have been lacking in doing. And like Councillor McKenna, I like the fact that this one is personalized to our own local community. So thank you, and send our thanks to the task force as well, and give them encouragement to continue coming forward with such localized supportive tools. Thank you. Nadine, you're not going anywhere though, because item 8.3 on the agenda is the resolution of support, motion M-84, anti-hate crimes and incidents and private members bill BC-313, banning symbols of hate report. Can you give us a synopsis on what that's about?
Sure. And sorry, just a note on that other item. I did invite us, Mr. Chuck Commanda to next week's meeting. So he is hoping to come and do the first official reading at a council meeting.
Lovely. Thank you.
So this report tonight, again, is a recommendation of our Racism and Discrimination Task Force. And ironically, some of our members were discussing, hate symbols and signs in the community. And it was quite timely to see this resolution come forward from the City of Kitchener. And it was brought forward as a correspondence item to our Racism and Discrimination Task Force. So tonight they are asking that Council brings forward a resolution to support the City of Kitchener's resolution. I've detailed the resolution on the report. You'll note, in addition to that, it was actually, I believe, Mayor Panko at the meeting who recommended that we include the wording that the federal government conduct a comprehensive review of all possible symbols of hate and discrimination and consider developing a law that would prohibit hate within our community. So if council is supportive tonight, this resolution can be brought forward at our meeting as well.
Thank you, Nadine. Comments or questions from council? I don't see any, but I assume that we are probably all in consensus that we should move this ahead. And I believe that this will come ahead to the meeting tonight. Is that correct, Nadine?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So you have direction and consensus from council to bring this forward.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Mayor Panko, item 8.4 is yours, reconciliation event and monument. I'll just turn the floor over to you.
Sure, thank you. There have been numerous discussions by both the task force as well as a breakout group from the task force related to an act of reconciliation, and largely driven most recently, of course, by the discovery of the previously as unmarked graves at residential schools across the country. So through the outcome of all this discussion and also some consideration and consult with members of our First Nations community, there was a consensus that we would hold an event as our community's act of reconciliation. So with Truth and Reconciliation Week happening the week of September 27th, that we would hold an event on October 1st that will coincide with the efforts that are happening at SFDCI. So there will be a number of events held at SFDCI at the end of next week. And as a result of that, there's also going to be a mini powwow held the afternoon of October 2nd. So in keeping with that spirit, the intent was to hold an event on the Friday evening. The plan right now is it will be held it will start at dusk in Centennial Park, and the procession would go from Centennial Park to Duck Island, where there will be a small service and an act of reconciliation. And through that process, people will be invited to bring solar lights, which would then be left on Duck Island as a temporary memorial to the lost children. So it's being led by the Indigenous members of the task force, as I mentioned, with guidance and support from organizers and the organizers and participants at the powwow. So there will be an Indigenous drummer who will be helping lead the way, helping guide the way. So it will be I think a significant event for a community that we can acknowledge and remember in ways that we otherwise have not have done so far. So more details will emerge, but people want to sort of put it in their calendars for, I think it's about 6:30 on Friday night, October 1st, starting in Centennial Park. So we're looking for, I guess, supportive council, as we will be utilizing a little bit of town resources for that. I'm walking across town land, so looking for support for council for that. And secondly, the task force has also been discussing opportunities for a permanent form of reconciliation and reflection. And again, turning to guidance from the First Nations members of our task force plus the advisors that we've had, I guess, access to. We've been able to lead the way. And the sense right now is we would provide a location that could potentially be on Turtle Island or Duck Island or possibly somewhere else in the community. But I'm looking for support from council to proceed further with that permanent site of reconciliation. And so I would go back to our task force members and put more details into what that could look like. But at this stage, we wanted to ensure we had the support of council before we went any further. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mayor Pankow. Any comments or questions from council? Let's start with the event for, well, are you looking for support in two parts, Sean? One for the monument and one for the event?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Wendy's got two thumbs up. Okay, let's start with questions about the event. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the event for next week? Seeing none. Okay. Oh, Lorraine.
Not a question. I'm just pleased to say to the mayor how wonderful it is that we can have this mini powwow and this reconciliation. It's great. I'm really pleased this is happening.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. Sean, I assume because we've got a council meeting next week, you'll give some more details as developments occur over the next week at that meeting. So people should look for an update in your mayor's report at that meeting.
Yeah, we should have final details by that point, and I think we'll also have a press release go out to ensure the community is aware of it, to ensure anyone who wants to participate is able to participate.
Okay, perfect. In that case, I think you've got thumbs up all around for that event. The second is the request for the monument. Does council have any questions or comments on a permanent monument in town? Councillor McKenna.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm supportive of the whole concept around some formal acknowledgement by way of a monument or a place. So I don't want, and the committee has talked about the development of a monument is something that normally takes a significant amount of time, thoughtful conversations with many, many people, so that you don't end up in 10 years saying, oh, what have we done? We've made a mistake. We need to move it, or some group is hurt, or we've done something quite innocently or in a rush to get something up. We've, I won't say we've blundered into it, but other monuments have failed for those reasons. And there is a whole process around monument development, which the committee is aware of. And I just wanted to assure council that they're a very serious group of people. They're very thoughtful and intelligent. And so they're doing the due diligence. So it's not, because when it first came up, it's the automatic response to think, oh, let's put it here and it could look like this, as opposed to why are we doing this? What is it we want to say? What's the purpose of it? And what do we hope to come of it? So the committee is aware that this is a very serious and somber monument, and we will take the time and have the discussions we need to do this properly. I think the location is ideal. At first we talked about the town square, but I think as the committee's thinking of all that work group, I was really pleased to see that they were looking towards Duck Island or Turtle Island as a more permanent location. So I just wanted to let the public know that monument development is serious business, and that work group has really done a nice job to date, and I'm confident we'll end up with the essence of what the reconciliation and the tragedies of the past colonialism have had on our First Nations people. So I just thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. I won't lie. I mean, my first impression when we started talking about a monument was that seems, in my opinion, to be a little bit colonialist in and of itself. So I'm relieved to hear that the committee is doing the their due diligence, that in and of itself is appropriate. Sorry. Or if there's something that's a little less tangible, that's more appropriate and in keeping with the customs of our First Nations communities within the area. So that's good to hear. So Mayor Pankow?
Yeah, and there'll be more coming forward, obviously, but we're really relying on the support of our cultural advisors in guiding us here, and it's while it may be man-made, it probably be much more natural items, native plantings, natural medicines will probably form part of it, as well as a place of quiet reflection. So those are the discussions we're having so far. But I just wanted to, it's not, I don't think it's up to the municipality to necessarily lead this. We want to make sure that we're led by those who know more than us and can help guide us away.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Alfred, you have some comments?
Just a very quick one, because I think the task force I think they're more than on the right path, but I know that there are t-shirts coming, and the quote on it is "nothing about us without us." And if that's the case, then as Sean has said, we'll let them lead the way and we'll support what they bring forward to us.
Thank you. All right, then Sean, I believe you have consensus and direction to move that item forward, and we look forward to hearing more details about it.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. All
right, items 8.5 and 8.6. I'll start by saying that I understand via Deputy Clerk Bennett that there is no rush on either of these items tonight. So if council does not wish to make a decision, that we may postpone both this item and the next item, item 8.6. So Mr. McMunn, I'll turn the floor over to you to discuss items, the first item, which is the reconstruction of Wood Avenue storm and roadway elements report. And if for efficiency's sake, you'd like to blend that into items 8.6, which is the local improvement charge for the Maple Ridge subdivision, being Wood Avenue phase 2, then please by all means do so.
Thank you. Just an audio check from my end. You guys can hear me okay? Okay, thank you. So thank you for the introduction, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of this Committee of the Whole. So it's the first time some of you are seeing me here this evening, so I just want to say hello, and I'm quite happy to be the new Director of Public Works and Utilities for the town of Smiths Falls. So with that being said, as was introduced, I do have a couple of reports this evening, and the one definitely does feed into the other one. So report 2021-101 is with respect to the reconstruction of Wood Avenue with respect to storm sewer improvements and roadway elements improvements. So this section of roadway is between Armstrong Drive and Margarite Street within town. And the purpose of the report this evening is to get authorization from the Committee of the Whole to pass it through to Council for consideration, to pass a bylaw to award the reconstruction of Wood Avenue to Campbell's Trucking Inc., who are currently working on the phase 2 development within that subdivision. Excuse me. So the first recommendation that we have this evening is to ask for an exemption from the procurement bylaw to sole source of work to Campbell's Trucking Incorporated. That being said, we did get 3 quotes in so much that we asked the developer's consultant WSP to provide an engineer's estimate for the work, and then we used our town's engineering consultant EVB to also come up with a construction estimate for the works, and then thirdly, we did get a construction estimate from the developer. The last page of the report, which I'm sure you are all privy to, represents the area that we're looking at for, for the reconstruction would be the blue section within the Appendix A at the end of the report. So this would be the existing Wood Avenue. And it represents about 62.9% of the costs that the town would assume to facilitate the reconstruction of Wood Avenue. So perhaps maybe a little bit of background. There is a storm sewer or stormwater management pond at the far northwest corner of Wood Avenue up in behind Harold Street that was always intended to service Wood Avenue. So I guess it's important for council to understand that existing Wood Avenue between Armstrong Drive and Margarite Street currently has open ditches, culverts at the driveways, very much kind of a rural cross section, if you will. And what we're looking to do is have the developer, if council approves this evening or passes it on, or sorry, the committee of the whole passes it on to council and this gets approved, is to plumb in that storm sewer. It's a bit of a case of you can't get there from here. So from phase 2, going northerly down Wood Avenue, there is no storm sewer mains within the ground to get to that stormwater management pond at the far northwest end of the development. We do have an ECA approval for the storm sewer to be plumbed in, and currently right now, any water that's coming off phase 2 of Wood Avenue that's currently being developed, that water would shed to the west through that developer's lands, and that kind of goes against any drainage bylaw that the town would have. You can't shed water onto adjacent property owners. So like I said, I think the original intention always was to have this storm sewer plumbed in, and that's what we're looking for presenting to this committee of the whole this evening for consideration. So perhaps maybe we'll, through the chair, take any questions with respect to that right now.
Thank you, Mr. McMunn. We'll start with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you, Director McMunn, and good to talk to you for the first time, and welcome. And this issue is I think council is well aware of what you just described, and I support your recommendation. I think that you know we're obtaining a great subdivision, and we're also addressing something that happened many years ago. For the reason is, from what I understand, is that when those houses were built back in the 80s, at the time we didn't have the wastewater capability of handling that. We had a special dispensation from Ministry of Environment to build it that way. So I think that addresses that. I congratulate the developer for cost sharing with us, and so I support the recommendation to go ahead, and I'm sure the people along Wood Avenue will be happy with it. The only caveat would be the 6 houses on Marguerite Street will not get the same advantage, and which is unfortunate. And I would hope maybe that council could revisit that decision we made last year. But I support your recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Any other comments or questions from council? Mayor Pankow.
Yes, thank you, Director McMahon. To my understanding, when a new subdivision is constructed, the developer is responsible for stormwater management, including the appropriate drainage, stormwater ponds, and sewers, of course. In this situation, there's a degree of obviously responsibility to the developer, but we're assuming some of the responsibility. And can you explain to me the primary difference between, I guess, another plan of subdivision that doesn't have these open ditches adjacent to it, and simply connecting to town services elsewhere, and this development?
Yeah, so it is a little bit unique, I guess, in the sense that it's somewhat, I guess, atypical. I guess the logic behind this, I guess, from Public Works perspective and from a planning perspective, is we know that we do have an existing section of Wood Avenue. For whatever reason, I don't have the history on it from back in the day, why it was designed in such a fashion as it was, with kind of more of a rural cross section, open ditches and culverts and the like. But what we do know is through the design of this whole area that the Wood Avenue Phase 2 to the immediate south, you know, they've got an ECA approval to plumb in their storm sewers and to outlet it to the north. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the Ministry of Environment called MECP, that they did have in the agreement, that they did have the caveat in there that these storm sewers be upgraded with storm sewer pipes in the ground for the section between Armstrong Road and Margarite Street. So I think that's what we're dealing with right now. And I apologize, I simply missed Mayor Panko. I don't have the history from back in the day. But like I mentioned earlier, it's a case of the developer, you know, you can't get there from here. There is a segmented section in the middle that doesn't allow for them to connect their storm sewer downstream. But I think your question was, you know, why does the municipality bear costs associated with these improvements, if you will, through this section? I guess I would have to say that, you know, there is some history here from back in the day. For whatever reason, it was approved with open ditches, and I think the town does assume some of that responsibility, at least a percentage of it. And granted, the town is bearing a large percentage of those costs, but for the betterment of the development as a whole. And I think the other thing to keep in mind here is we're taking this opportunity to improve the cross-section roadway through that section with curbs, a sidewalk, you know, moving lighting, be much easier for people within the street to mow their lawns. They won't have a ditch to have to try to mow and maintain. There'll be less maintenance issues because we won't have culverts that potentially could freeze up and block storm runoff in the wintertime. So there's a multitude of reasons why it does benefit the town. You know, the costs, I guess, associated with it kind of become secondary somewhat. You know, so we are getting some value for the redevelopment of the road. So it's not money wasted. It's going to improve the drainage through that whole area and road improvements and a much needed sidewalk. I must mention as well for the area that currently doesn't have it right now. I know that the sidewalk doesn't equate to over $600,000, but it's part of it for sure.
Well, and I guess I could presume that we simply allow the developer to dig up the street, run pipes through the street, and we leave the ditches where they are, which makes 0 sense. So while we're going through this exercise, obviously that makes it would be the time to correct a situation, which, to Councillor Brennan's point, was probably the only option back then, but still makes a lot more sense to do it right today. And had we left things the way they are, we'd have culverts to replace at some point in time, ditches to probably dredge out at some point in time. So it's a one-time investment for a long-term benefit. And as you mentioned, the widening of the street, the addition of the sidewalk, safety for pedestrians, it all makes sense. And I appreciate the work that was done, the consultancy work that was done to allot the cost based on the drainage factors. And so I support that part of it. And I guess the other, I guess, difficult part or challenging part is a single source for the cost that has been outlined, which is well over our procurement level, but understanding the work that was done to verify the potential cost, the cost comparison, it makes it a little bit easier to accept, especially considering Mr. Campbell is doing the work adjacent to this and obviously has the local exposure already. So, okay, that's just my questions at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Alfred.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm almost of the mind to defer this, as you have stated, and the clerk said that there's not a huge rush for this. I have several questions going around in my head, and I think I'd like some more time to articulate those for staff. If we are if it wasn't for Maple Ridge being built there, things would have stayed as they are for the foreseeable future. But now Maple Ridge is there and their services have to come down that street. I'm a little bit thinking out loud as to the 62% assigned to Smiths Falls and how that all works. And as I said, I think I would be more in line to consider this and I don't really have a big problem with single sourcing because Mr. Campbell's on site, he's driving, right? I mean, there are many efficiencies, but in terms of this and the next one, the local improvement charge, I think I'd like some more time with this, Madam Chair. We got it Friday, I think. And that would be my suggestion to my colleagues is that we defer this and have a little bit more time to think about it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Alfred. I mean, this is a new subject matter for our discussions. I mean, we've never seen such a complex development in the town of Smiths Falls, particularly given the history and number of players who are now at the table to negotiate cost sharing. I concur with Councillor Alfred that I think if there is indeed no need to make a decision on this in a pressing timeline, that we should defer. But I will ask for clarity from CAO Morris what the developer's anticipated timeline was for putting the work in, because at some point, excavation and reinstatement of Wood Avenue is going to come to a screeching halt due to weather conditions. So was it the developer's intention to get this completed by snowfall?
Yeah, so good question. So my understanding is that the phase 2, the downstream work, is progressing quite rapidly. So they will need a pipe to connect to reasonably soon. And yes, the intent was, his intent was to start construction this season. Having said that, council ultimately has to be comfortable with the decision they make. So I would submit, if more information is required, that we arrive at the right decision. That would be the priority. But yeah, I would say that there's that this could be kind of the linchpin, so to speak, for the downstream services to be fully installed and put into service.
Okay, thank you, CAO Morris. We'll go to Chris McGuire, but perhaps I'll let council kind of ruminate on this. If we are going to defer making a decision on this, I'd like to be able to ascertain from the group exactly what it is that we feel we need further answers to before we make a decision. So Chris, I'll let you start and then I'll call for comment again of that nature from the floor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Welcome, Director McMahon. Yeah, I guess obviously reading this report, it gives me a little bit of pause because we always say growth pays for growth, and it's hard to see it in this one. But that being said, with all the talk of the housing crisis stuff, I don't want to defer it if as the chair has just said, there's not some tangible stuff that we're looking for. So my first question, I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better still, is that, and make sure that I've got it right in my head, is that the open air ditches have a certain capacity. The extra capacity and flow that's going to be pushed through them to get to the stormwater pond from the new development is going to push them over capacity and create flooding. So that's why we need to rebuild the pipe right now. Is that correct?
My understanding is that the outlet along existing Wood Avenue, there's a couple of outlets that discharge to the immediate west and make their way out through, I guess, what would be the developer's lands to the immediate west. I don't believe that the open ditches could or ever would get all the way down to the stormwater management pond at the far northwest corner of the property, just based on elevation. I think it was naturally designed back in the day to outlet through a couple of, I presume there's easements that go to the immediate west and outlet to that area. And like I said, maybe I didn't mention it before, but that stormwater management pond does have a section of main that comes up into the existing cul-de-sac area with a pipe that was designed back in the day to receive a storm sewer down existing Wood Avenue when the time came. And we're at that time now, is my understanding.
So this is about modifying the catchment to meet a design from future development so that this neighborhood can be completed per se.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So that helps. I guess the next question and my last question is, I know Director Dunlop spent a lot of work on this before he left. Were these numbers roughed in before he left? Was that 62.9% a number that he negotiated, or is that a number that's been negotiated since he left?
We just recently got information back from the consultants with those numbers, but I presume I don't really I don't know the conversations that Troy had leading up to this, but I know he had his hands on it. But like I say, those numbers, and the reason why it didn't come out in the agenda until Friday was because we were literally waiting for some of those numbers to come through. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. I think CAO Morris might be able to jump in with some of that historical context.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would refer to the draft, the conditions of draft approval in the Maple Ridge subdivision. There is a clause in that agreement that says stormwater management works to facilitate Maple Ridge are to be apportioned accordingly. So it was a very prescriptive condition, and it was based on drainage area. So we had engaged a consultant to do that work, and Troy had sort of facilitated that work through the consultant and agreed with the proportionate share that came out of the study. So it complies with the draft condition of approval for Maple Ridge.
Okay.
So we're as staff, we're confident that the apportionment of costs is accurate.
So I guess in conclusion, then, it doesn't sound like I'm not hearing any reasonable way that we're going to get any more money out of this. So it's unfortunate that we're going to have to spend this much money, but it'll correct an error of 40 years ago, and we can move on. And as soon as that revenue starts coming in from the development, I think it'll make up for it. So right now, I would lean towards approving it as recommended.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGuire. Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. McMahon, I found your explanation very helpful, and I appreciate that. I'm, along with Councillor Brennan, more ready to, I kept thinking, what else could I learn or do, as Councillor McGuire just pointed out, that should it be 68% or 55% when the experts, consultants who work for us come up with this. We knew that there was going to be a cost sharing agreement all along. I just don't know what other information could possibly be out there that would help me defer this. I mean, it is complex file, but I think Mr. McMahon helped me get down to the nitty gritty of it, and CEO Morris did as well, that this is, I'm ready to accept the recommendation this evening, but out of deference to our chair and Councillor Alford, I do respect both of those. If they would like more time, and there's no harm in doing that, I would be okay with that, but I'm ready to go tonight if the majority of council would like to do that.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any other comments or questions from the floor? Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, just, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if someone has a question or they're not comfortable, you know, absolutely get your question answered and be comfortable with your decision. However, that being said, we do have a developer who wants to go ahead and get going. And I know there's people that live along that road that are anxious to see a sidewalk. So if we could defer it for a week, I'm fine with that. And just another point to Councillor McGuire, 40 years ago, I don't think it was a mistake because, the town was looking for development. That was the only way to get that particular subdivision done. And I'll just mention it again, but the people of Margarite Street built their houses at the same time and they're not getting the same advantages. So I think we should relook at that. But certainly if you want to wait a week, I'm happy with that. That's fine. But I think the division of monies is logical. And so again, I support staff's recommendation. If council is ready to do it, I'm ready to do it tonight.
All right, thank you, Councillor Brennan. Mayor Pankow?
Yeah, I mean, I think my questions have been answered, and in this situation, we have to have faith and confidence, or I have faith and confidence in the process that was followed to get us to this point. And it is a significant cost, but I also recognize that, the amount of annual property taxes coming from this subdivision when fully built out will likely exceed this cost in 1 year. So not the first year, obviously, but when fully built out. So we need the housing, it's development in our community, but if as we have in previous decisions in the past, we have deferred for a week to ensure that every member of council had the level of comfort that we were ready to move ahead. So I'm fine moving ahead tonight. I'm fine also waiting another week if that's the preference of committee. Okay,
thank you, Mayor Pankow. Councillor Allen, I don't believe you've provided comment. Do you have any comment on this?
No, I agree with the mayor. I would be happy to move forward with this, but if people need more time, it's okay too.
Okay, so in that case, it's down to Wendy and I. So Wendy, is there anything more specific that you feel like you need an answer to before you have a level of comfort on agreeing on this?
Well, Madam Chair, I think Councillor McGuire, it crystallized for me when Councillor McGuire said growth pays for growth. And I don't think this was a surprise to me, $691,000. And I also think about the conversations we had over Margarite Street. And if we're in for 700, why not make it 750? So, and get that all cleaned up. But again, I believe in the collective wisdom of our council. So while I am uncomfortable, because I was not expecting $700,000 in a cost sharing arrangement with a developer who's building 120 homes in there. If that's the will of council, then I don't have any more specific, articulate questions to pose.
Okay. So I'm going to provide my own 2 cents. I've seen and worked with similar arrangements, so I have a fair degree of level of comfort agreeing to the concept of cost sharing this. I too was surprised at the sticker value on it, but I think that comes with the exorbitant cost of materials right now, which I don't think is doing anybody any favors. And I would very much like to see this project move ahead. I'm going to suggest that because we have a council meeting tonight and committee of the whole next week, that we postpone the actual reading of the bylaw to next week and have a special council meeting then. And that would give us a pregnant pause to consider whether or not any other feedback or information comes to light within that week. The only questions that I have at this point actually pertain to the issuance of the environmental compliance approval. So, Paul, can you confirm that the ECA has already been issued for the stormwater works, and that ECA was issued under the condition that all of the stormwater infrastructure was indeed enclosed for the stretch, and that there would be a requirement for a completely new ECA application if we were to consider Margarite Street as an extension of this work? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
Oh, maybe not. There you are.
There I am. So no, if Margarite Street were to be incorporated, it would be my understanding that we would have to make application for an ECA for Margarite Street to upgrade. You're speaking to storm sewer improvements on Margarite Street, Madam Chair?
Yes, sorry. So the ditching as it exists on Wood Avenue is identical to that on Margarite. And we had previously debated as a council whether or not, at the request of those property owners, if we should not be enclosing their ditches as well.
Yeah, I apologize, Madam Chair. I'm not familiar with Margarite Street. I'd have to look at it to see whether or not, was that part of the original subdivision back in 40 years ago?
No, you know what? I'll retract the question and give you a chance to get up to speed on the file. But perhaps if council has any amount of appetite on the Margarite discussion, perhaps we could give staff clear direction to actually cycle back to us with that, with some new information, which I believe under the Municipal Act would give us the authority to reconsider that item if there is indeed new information. Is that correct, CAO Morris?
Yeah, so we could certainly look at the impacts of incorporating Margarite. My suspicion is that it would change the catchment area and therefore alter the ECA approval. So I would hazard a guess that process would have to start over. But I would just like to offer that the fundamental difference here is that the storm sewer on Wood is essential to facilitate future development. It's an elective on Margarite. Leaving Margarite as is does not affect the rest of the subdivision. So one's compulsory in my view, and the other is purely elective.
Okay, thank you, CAO Morris. Having heard from all members of council, Councillor McGuire, do you have something new to add to the discussion? Yeah, otherwise, I'll call the vote.
Madam Chair, just for the context, the last report we got from Director Dunlop, the estimate on Margarite was 200 to 250,000. Now I expect that to be higher because the ironworks prices have gone up so much over the last year. So that was our starting point, and then the design for it was 10 to 15,000. So that's the kind of ballpark of costs we're talking. And from my watch, there's 5 houses, 5 driveways that come onto that section of the street. So for context, maybe that's helpful information to have right now.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So with that, council, I will go ahead and call the vote on this item. And I'm just going to go back to the resolution to read it again. So the recommendation from the staff report is that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls pass a bylaw to approve an exemption to the procurement bylaw to sole source to Campbell's Trucking, Inc. for works to complete the reconstruction of Wood Avenue storm sewers and roadway. And that council authorized the mayor and the clerk to execute the contract agreement with Campbell's Trucking, Inc. in the amount of $691,532.06, including net HST, and that council pre-approve a 2022 capital budget expenditure in the amount of $691,532.06, including net HST. So I'll call for a straw vote that we bring that forward as articulated by staff at the next special meeting of council, which will be next Monday. All right. Those supportive? All right. Thank you. Okay. And Paul, you are up again with the next item, which relates to that item. I'll read your recommendation. It's that council directs staff to issue a notice of intent to pass a bylaw with respect to a proposed local improvement charge to be applied to non-developer owned building lots fronting and benefiting from the services of the Phase 2 Wood Avenue extension within the Maple Ridge subdivision. Can you provide a synopsis of what that is?
I certainly can, Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, so this report kind of speaks to a mechanism on how the town would see recovery of some of the costs associated with this project kind of as a whole, phase 2, and then there's the existing Wood Avenue section that would have to be incorporated for all of the whole catchment area that was noted in the report. So we did consult with legal counsel, Mr. Tony Fleming, on this particular development, and in which would be the best way to recover those funds for the developer. One of the options would be Development Charges Act for front-ending the agreement, and my understanding the town doesn't have development charges at the current time. Fee or charge bylaw, which wasn't recommended. Local improvement charge was recommended. Holding symbol was not recommended, and special service charge was not recommended. So Tony suggested that the best mechanism to recover costs for the developer that would be upfronted by the developer to make this happen would be through a mechanism of local improvement charge. So then we go on to kind of investigate and you know, how does that work? So we know that each property fronting Wood Avenue has a certain footage of frontage on the roadway. There's 18 lots within the phase 2 development of Wood Avenue. 7 of those are privately owned, and the balance of those lots are owned by Campbell Trucking Incorporated. So you know, trying to find a mechanism in a way that that each of those property owners that own those 7 lots, how do they go about contributing? So this report speaks to, it works out to just shy of $5,600 per meter, and the lots that are affected are around 16 meters in lot frontage on Wood Avenue phase 2. So those would be, this is what the report speaks to in terms of, you know, drafting a notice of intent to give to those 2 property owners, putting them on notice, if you will. There is a 30-day appeal process in which they can appeal it. That being said, the majority property owner would be Campbell Trucking Incorporated for the majority of the 18 lots. So, you know, it can be appealed, but not likely to really grow any legs, if you will. Because right now it's those 7 lots, if you will, benefit from the servicing that Campbell Trucking Incorporated is putting in for phase 2 development. Previously, they were not serviced lots. So the developer needs a mechanism to be able to recover some of the expenses to service those properties. And the fact that they benefit from it, it only seems fair that they contribute to the costs associated with those works. So that's what this report speaks to. That being said, we're not going to make any, or you're not going to make any decisions on it this evening, having decided to defer till next week. So I guess you could kind of think about it over the week and how you wanted to address this particular staff report. So I'll take any questions through the chair if there are any.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. McMunn. I think I saw Councillor McGuire's hand go up, so we'll start there.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Were these lots purchased directly from the town?
That is, sorry, am I still muted? No, sorry. That's my understanding, yes.
I think I've got enough information to approve this tonight, and then if we can put it on next week's council, or if it has to be the week after, I think this is going to increase the value of those lots. I think when you look at what those lots were sold for back when they were sold, it might have been another one of those mistakes, because I think anytime we're making a quick buck as a town that is going to create a liability for a future council, for future staff, I don't think that's good development. So once again, we're correcting something that maybe it wasn't the best way to do it in the past, but I want to know who finances this. Well, it's out there. Like, does this come out of the town reserves until each property owner pays up, or how does that part work?
No, through the chair, if I could. Yeah, no, the developer would be fronting the costs, the upfront costs for the works to go through, and then the town would simply, I guess, be the middleman in so much that we would, have to develop a strategy what we can offer those 2 property owners for those 7 lots in terms of how they pay the apportioned costs for their contribution towards the work. So that has yet to be decided. But we would basically recover those dollar amounts through like a building permit process. Once those monies are recovered, then we would simply turn around and pay it back to the developer.
So worst case scenario, how long could this, like if they decide they're not going to participate, it becomes a lien, or how does that work?
It would be a lien on the property, yes.
And then the developer just has that on the books until something happens.
Yeah, I think if and I may defer to our CAO Malcolm on this one, if you have some more insight.
Yeah, through the chair. A local improvement charge is actually a priority lien on a property. So if it's not collected, it can be added to taxation. So that's one thing. The other is the length of time. I mean, the figures that were calculated are measurable in terms of the size. So one of the things that we would want committee and council to consider is a payback plan. We would suggest a 10-year plan for the homeowners, the landowners rather, to pay the full amount of the cost. So we have some options in terms of how it's administered, but essentially there's a process. The first step, as we've outlined, is to approve a notice or an intent to pass a bylaw. And as Mr. McMahon indicated, there's a 30-day waiting period. So there's some time before we would actually bring a bylaw back. The regulation for local improvement charges are very prescriptive. I wouldn't say it's a fascinating read, but it's insightful in terms of the powers that a municipality has to collect monies in this fashion. Not uncommon. It may be the first time it's been done in Smiths Falls, to my knowledge, but not an uncommon approach to ensure that property owners are paying their fair share of the value they get from improvements. But what's really important to understand here is that the town is not an owner. The developer came to us and said, hey, I'm going to invest all this money. The value of these properties is going to go up. And he asked us to come up with a mechanism to recover those proportionate costs.
So just to follow up for my understanding of this stuff, do we go to a tax sale if it doesn't get paid, or what's the final step of this process if they don't follow through?
Yeah, so we would consider it like we would any balance owing to the town. So it would be, if payment weren't forthcoming, it could be added to taxes, and if that weren't paid, there's a process to do that. But so I think that's why it's important to make sure we have a reasonable payment plan in place that the landowners can accommodate. So it could be longer. It cannot be longer than the life of the asset. So this is a fairly long-term asset. We'll probably amortize it or consider it a useful life of 50 years. So we could go that long, but clearly that may not be practical. But I mean, we're certainly open to input from committee, but we think 10 years would be a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. Councillor McKenna, I think your hand was up.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of the recommendation. I did have one question, and I apologize if it's in there somewhere and I missed it. Given this, the new water and stormwater going right by the door of these underdeveloped lots, which they couldn't have done anything with until this actually happened. So it's quite possible that people are going to start building on those, which would be great. Is the environmental approval, did it include this development as well as the Woods subdivision when they sought that? Because this will all be going into the same pipe. So if it's in there, I might have missed it.
Yes, through the chair. It's all part and parcel in the same ECA application. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I see Mayor Panko's hand up, and then we'll go to Councillor Brennan, who I saw a hand for too.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I understand the rationale, the reasoning, and the math behind the calculations here, and accept that as being appropriate. My concern would simply be I mean, obviously the number is pretty staggering, which the local improvement charge is probably greater than the value of the lot, or probably comparable to the value of the lot. So my concern would just be the possibility that if the landowners did not pay it and it accumulates with interest onto the lot as a lien against the lot, that it could grow to the point where they basically walk away, and then we got a lot or lots that are subject to tax sale with an amount owing on it that's far greater than the value of the lot. And this land sits potentially undeveloped for an awful long period of time. So I guess in staff's discussions, I would be agreeable to maybe the possibility of extending the charge over a longer period of time to mitigate the possibility that it doesn't get paid and we end up with lots that have a greater amount owing than the value of the lot.
Sorry, I'm here. I'm just trying to eat dinner. CEO Morris, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think we'll take direction from council in this regard. But again, it can be from 1 year up to the life of the asset. So I would suggest you anywhere between 1 and 50 years would be within the law of this piece of legislation. But, you know, we could run a few scenarios, just do the math on it to see what that would be. There is authority within the local improvement charge regulation to also apply interest payments to the payment. So council can choose to do that, or I suppose conversely can choose not to. But the whole idea is that the local improvement charge should cover the full cost. There should not be a taxpayer component to this scenario. There are cases when the municipality may want to contribute towards a local improvement, but we believe in this situation, the clear benefactors to this work are the landowners, not the taxpayer.
Thank you, CEO Morris. Councillor Brennan, you're next.
Yeah, I support this. I mean, it's not like we're gouging anyone here. We're just getting fair value for the service provided, and the developers bearing that cost for the rest of the properties. And I think 10 years is reasonable. I think that probably these lots here will be developed forthwith. Now that everything else is going to be done along the street. So I think 10 years is reasonable. I'm ready to go and approve this. I think it's a creative solution to sort of a unique problem, which was I was aware of before. And I think that this is a way to get around it and make sure that, I think it's a win-win for the developer. It's a win-win for us. It's a win-win for the people that own the properties, because they're going to have service properties now. So 10 years is fine with me.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor McGuire, your hand's up.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I want to make sure I understand this right. We're talking about $5,586.87 over 10 years.
Mr. McMahon?
Yeah, no, that's per meter frontage cost. So I believe the lots are 16 meters of frontage, so 16 times that number per lot.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to incentivize development, and I'd like to see it go through.
CEO Morris, you have a comment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would draw committee's attention to page 2 of the appendix, the WSP report. That's the local improvement charges study. And on page 2, there's a table showing the local improvement charge by lot. So as Mr. McMunn said, there's a per meter value, and they simply did the math to come up with the total local improvement charge. I would point out that the one at the bottom, Wood Street, is worth noting that the 21.5 meters is the width of the right-of-way. So we considered the owner at the end of the right-of-way, which happens to be Campbell's Trucking, as a landowner in this arrangement. So every landowner, including the one at the end, contributes to the cost. Now, because he's upfronting it, he's not paying a charge, but he's upfronting the whole cost of the work.
Okay, thank you, CEO Morris. Mayor Panko, you have closing comments?
Yeah, I appreciate these could be developed fairly soon, but there's no certainty of that. And applying a $8,900 or $9,300 charge per year on top of property taxes on a vacant lot is a significant cost. And there's really no advantage to the town, in my mind, unless I'm missing something, to accelerate this. I think there's potential risk to the town if we accelerate it. And that's my comment with regards to the benefit of stretching it out. It simply becomes property taxes over a longer period of time. If we did over 40 years, it's $2,200 a year extra, roughly, let's say, $2,300 extra a year over the next 40 years. So it simply becomes part of a payment versus such a significant amount annually for a decade. My thoughts, and we're not receiving the money, we're simply being a flow through here.
Thank you, Mayor Panko. Councillor Alfred, I'll let you chime up with closing comments, and then I'm going to jump in my own.
Thank you. I think a couple of things. I think Sean's right. At those prices, we could maybe go 15 or 20 years to make it more in easier bites for those people come along to build or develop that land. And I can't remember which colleague, perhaps Councillor Brennan, said that we're not really taking anything from the taxpayers, and nor should we for this. That's not exactly true, because we're going to be paying $691,000. But also my comment would be that the big winners here are the existing taxpayers on Wood Avenue, whose homes will now be increased in value because they're on the system too. So I don't want that to be lost, that yes, they are our taxpayers currently, and their houses, when this is built out, will be worth more than they were before we started. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so my own comments on this, I agree with the use of the LIC. I don't question that in any level. I also don't question the evaluation that was provided by our engineers on the per meter cost of the lot frontage. I think it's reasonable, and quite frankly, is nearing these lots into something that would be comparable to an appraised value on fully serviced municipal land. I mean, when you look at these lots, 60 meters of frontage is a huge serviced municipal lot. I think if you look at the frontages on the back half of the subdivision, what you're seeing is that the lot frontage on newer modern lots is decreasing significantly to float the cost on a per meter basis of the extension of infrastructure. So the consequence is that these how many lots are these? 15 lots are going to be McMansions, and they're going to be $1 million homes because they are just such spacious lots compared to what you could get anywhere else in the Ottawa Valley at this point. I don't have concerns with an extension of the term, but I do question why we are establishing the term at all. I get that we can do so within the 50-year life of the asset, rather than making this a connection fee. So at the time that development occurs and the applicant comes in to pay for their permit, development application, what have you, and is applying for a connection to municipal services, why would we not levy the charge at that point with the accrued interest in the number of years it has taken to develop? And perhaps I'll direct that question to CAO Morris.
Yeah, so good question, and I think in the evaluation of options, Mr. Fleming had looked at kind of that approach as an impost fee, so to speak, to connect to the system. But unfortunately, when this subdivision was laid out, there was not a reserve of land incorporated. So usually the reserve of land is the trigger to impose a charge to connect to the system. So that doesn't exist in this case. So he felt in the absence of a reserve of land that wouldn't be the most effective way of capturing their contributions.
Okay, thank you. It helps to understand the lack of a 1 foot reserve, but I presume, and perhaps I'm incorrect, that there is a 1 foot reserve on the existing Wood Avenue allowance that would have to be lifted to permit development. Why would the municipality not simply apply a 1 foot reserve on these lots as part of the passing of the LIC bylaw?
I think the answer to that is the lots already exist, so we can't impose it after.
But you could impose it in the road allowance on the lots fronting on the street, because we have not opened the street.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly take that back to Mr. Fleming and see, but in his analysis of options, he had dismissed that approach because of the absence of the reserve. So I'd have to get his legal opinion on how we would go about instituting a reserve when the subdivisions, when the lots are already registered. They don't exist, but they're registered.
Okay. I have no concern moving this forward part and parcel with the previous item to next week's council meeting to pass resolution to give staff direction to move forward with the notification procedure. But I share Councillor Alfred and Mayor Panko's concerns about the extended liability to the municipality if these LICs go unpaid and ultimately result in tax sale by the municipality. And from our past track record, many of those tax sales have been unsuccessful, and we end up writing off a significant amount of reserve owing as a result that the land is just not seen to be developable because the cost is simply too high. I would like a little bit more information between now and next week about whether or not we could levy a 1 foot reserve within the unopened wood road allowance as a means of ensuring that these fees are collected through a connection fee at time of development when somebody is at the door ready to put their house on. Because I think that's a more viable option to ensure that those funds are indeed collected. But aside from that, I'm comfortable moving this forward. So I'll call for a show of hands. I think I've already done the count and everybody seems in favor of moving this forward at next week, but I'll ask for confirmation tonight. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So that brings us to the end of our committee of the whole agenda. I will call for a motion to adjourn, that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 6:26 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. A mover? Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Alfred. All those in favor? And off we go. Now we do have a council meeting following this meeting. For those who are attending, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Might be a bit more than 5. We've a lot of bylaws to be assigned here, but we'll do our best to go back as quickly as possible.
All right. Thank you, Sean. We'll be back in 5-ish minutes.
Okay, we've got a lot to cover.
Just wait till everyone comes back on here and then I'll start counting them out.
Sorry, Nadine?
I'm just gonna wait till a few more people come back on. I just have, and then we can start counting out who's got what.
Sure. We're waiting for Wendy and Peter. Jay, you have a seconder for the minutes?
So just to confirm, there won't be, when you add the items during mayor's announcements, it'll be, no, you won't be adding bylaw 7.7, it'll just be motion 8.2, 8.3 and 8.4. The bylaw and the resolution will come forward at the next meeting.
Sorry, add resolutions 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4, right? That's
correct.
Okay.
Can somebody second my wastewater treatment sewage lift pump? Thanks, Chris.
Well, so here, actually, I'll go through the list if you don't mind, so I don't miss anybody. Jay for the minutes, seconder.